Hi guys, I am going to take up your homework in this lesson, okay, this video. So I've opened a YouTube channel. I'm hoping that the quality is going to be like way better than what I've been showing you in the past, okay? So hopefully I'm coming along nicely here. All right, page 13, I assigned you 1, 5, and 7. That's what I have in front of me. So question 1 says, suggest 3 examples of species that clearly fit the definition of a species based on the biological species concept. So in other words, you just have to say, and they gave you the examples that I would have come up with, so I'll come up with different ones. A blue jay mates with a blue jay, okay? They're not interested in any other bird. A tiger, very similar to a lion, sorry. A tiger mates with a tiger, and a grasshopper mates with a grasshopper. So any 2 organisms that mate with each other that are part of the same species and produce fertile offspring, meaning that the offspring can also reproduce together, that's the definition of a biological species. So honestly, you could have come up with unlimited numbers almost, okay? Unlimited answers. Not quite unlimited because there are only so many species on Earth. Question number 5 says, species are involved in a diverse range of interactions. Provide a specific example of each of the following types of interactions. So I went ahead so I could be prepared here. One species removes parasites from another. Okay, that's going to be hygiene. One species needs help from another in order to reproduce. That's obviously reproduction. One species defends another species against attack. That is going to be protection. And then one species transports the offspring of another species, obviously transportation. And then letter E, one species provides a place for another species to live. I thought that could be 2 things, okay? I think the textbook was going for digestion because they talk about E. coli living in intestines, but it could also be protection because it mentions that some species live in like a hermit crab's shell, for instance. So whatever answer you put there, if you had 2 different answers, that's okay. I would say either of those are completely acceptable answers, okay? And question 7, what is meant by the following terms? Biodiversity, what do we mean by biodiversity? It means that diversity, if we break this up, diversity means a variety and bio means life. So biodiversity is having a wide variety of life on Earth. Structural diversity means how do organisms look different from each other? So in other words, you just have to go back to the evolution unit and think about homologous structures, analogous structures, etc. So different forms, so morphology would be structural diversity, okay? So in other words, an ape has a very different form than does a butterfly, than does a whale. And genetic variability means that our DNA, even though it is very similar, you'd be shocked at how similar the DNA between very different species would be, okay? So we could be up to like 90% similar. I'm making this up, but I'm giving an example. We could be 90% similar in our DNA to a cat, okay? But there is some room for variability. So in other words, if you're in the same species, if you're in the classroom, I'd say look around. Not everybody's exactly the same. We have lots of diversity. But if you were to look at your DNA between you and the person that you're looking at in the class, or as you are in your house right now, you are not 100% identical unless you have a twin, okay? If you have an identical twin, then you are 100% identical in your DNA, with the exception of the fact that maybe you guys have a couple mutations you've picked up individually. So genetic variability means that even within a species, there are differences in the DNA, okay? Some of us are going to be taller, some of us are going to be shorter, etc. All right, and that's question 7. So then I asked you to go on to page 20 and do 2, 3, and 5. All right, so on page 20, 2, 3, and 5, what is taxonomy? Explain how taxa are arranged in a hierarchy. So taxonomy is the study of classification, okay? So we're looking at it in terms of biology, but you can be a taxonomist in another realm altogether. So taxonomists study classification. They put things into groups to make sense of them. In terms of biology, we're talking about all the organisms on Earth. All right, just looking over question 3. Use a graphic organizer. I didn't want to tell you not to use a graphic organizer. If you're good at graphic organizers, that's awesome. What I really want you to know here is what are the key contributions of Linnaeus to the science of naming and classifying species, okay? So Carolus Linnaeus, or Carl Linnaeus, they called him many different things at the time. He came up with the system, the current system of classification. So I want you to know that. I've mentioned to you before, he's the father of taxonomy, which means he took that huge undertaking on of making sure that all the organisms during his time that he could have discovered were classified. Okay, and so classification is a really important thing, because if you want to find out what the insect is in front of you, you could actually look that up. Somebody's probably named that, very likely. In Ontario, we have the names of all of our insects, okay? And so you could look it up and say, okay, what's interesting about this bug? Is it going to bite me? Will I get an infection? That type of thing, okay? Does it have some kind of venom? All right, and so when he ordered all these different organisms into different groups, he also came up with binomial nomenclature. So in other words, binomial nomenclature uses the genus and the species name. Going back to question 2, how are taxa arranged in a hierarchy? That's where you have your domain, kingdom, phylum, etc. Okay, and so we only use the last 2 names in binomial nomenclature, the genus and the species name. All right, and lastly, this is a very good question to get you thinking. Okay, I like this one. If you had no trouble with it, that's awesome. Once I take it up and you have no trouble with it, that's just as good, okay? Because it's the idea that you can look at something and say, how related are these organisms? So they're not giving us the genus and species name here. They're giving us the family name, okay, and the order name and the family name. It doesn't matter where we go on the whole ranking of things. So what 2 species would you expect to share the greatest number of features? So you have to say, okay, this is my order, this is my order. So I need to find species with the same order and then the same family. And so which 2 species would I expect to have the same features or similar features? The river otter and the mink. In addition to that, they don't give us a name here because they're going to ask us for some ideas about it later. These 2 species here are also very similar because they have the same order and the same family. B says, which species would you expect to be the least similar to all others? And so then you have to say which species would be the most different from everybody else. Well, it would certainly be this one because it has a different order name than all the rest of these guys. These guys are all carnivores, carnivorous, all right? This one is not. What evidence is there that otters share more features with minks than dogs do with cats? So again, the otter and the mink have the same order name and the same family name. So they belong to the same order and to the same family. They're classified together up until this point. A cat and a dog are both carnivores, but then they separate into Canidae and Felidae. Okay, so that's why these 2 are more related than these 2, because the family name here is different. And then lastly, predict some probable characteristics of Alopex lagopus. So we're looking at this mysterious organism. I haven't looked it up. Maybe you guys can look that up and find out, you'll easily find out exactly what that is. But clearly it's some kind of a dog. So its features are going to be very similar because we're in the same order and now we're in the same family, okay? And this is the family of dogs. So it's going to have very similar features to every other dog. All right, awesome guys.